The Mars Late Model Championship suspended Bob Gardner indefinitely after he retaliated against Darryn Klein at Farmer City on Friday. I wrote this up over at stockcarreport.com. You can find the link in the description below. If you want to see exactly what happened on the track, the slider that Darryn Klein pulled on the first lap of the heat race, Bob Gardner's retaliation against him, where he eventually hit him in the side of the door and flipped him over on the exit of turn 4 there. You can see that in this Flow Racing video over on X. I've covered it in a previous video, so I'm not going to go over it again. But this is what Mars announced in their penalty report. They said that Gardner was indefinitely suspended for a minimum of 6 months before possibly reinstating. Additionally, he was also indefinitely suspended for at least a minimum of 6 months from World of Outlaws, late model events, DIRTcar, and World Racing Group sanctioned events. The series stated this penalty report is being made public due to the severity of the on-track incident to provide clarity and transparency of the incident and to show we do not condone this type of behavior at our events. One thing I didn't include in this article is this over here from the Mars series, which is their penalty report here. They did talk significantly about how Bob Gardner has been a loyal supporter of the Mars Late Model Championship Tour, attended every event that has been held since MC Promotions took ownership of the series in 2023, with the exception of one show. And he was 4th in the series standings both in 2023 and last year, and was currently 11th in the series standings heading into Farmer City before he was obviously DQ'd after he flipped Klein over, and then obviously was not competing in the subsequent races that they had over the weekend. So they did make that clear as well, and then obviously imposed those indefinite suspensions that are going to last a minimum of 6 months. Gardner has not actually issued a statement following the suspension. However, he previously admitted wrongdoing in a YouTube upload before this penalty report came out. And he says, "What I did was uncalled for, was wrong, was out of my character, but I did it, and I'll suffer the consequences for that, whatever that may be. That wasn't my intention. In the heat of the moment, I wanted to flatten Darryn's left rear tire, so in my mind, he put me out of contention for not only that heat, but for the rest of the night for a possible win. And in my mind, he wasn't going to finish that heat race. I just wanted to flatten his left rear tire so he couldn't finish the heat race. Give him a little bit of payback, whether anybody think that's right or wrong. That was my intention. Obviously, it didn't go that way and went way wrong from that point on. There's tons of factors in why it went wrong. I did make contact with him again. Should have never done that. That's on me, and I'll take responsibility for it." While he hasn't issued a specific statement about the penalty, he did note that he is at the Prairie Dirt Classic. Obviously, he's not competing, but he has set up a merchandise tent across the street at 307 West Pine Street. He posted this, obviously, yesterday, saying, Bob Gardner Racing will still be participating in the golf outing, and we'll have a door panel up for grabs at the auction. We can't sell shirts on the property, but we can across the street. Stop over at Paco's house across the street next to the school, 307 West Pine Street, to get your Bob Gardner Racing merch and have some drinks. I think within the last hour, he shared that they had actually set the sales tent up and were in operation there and selling stuff ahead of the Flow Racing Night in America race there at Falls. So I still think there is a big question as to whether or not this indefinite suspension is warranted with the 6-month minimum. Again, I think we have a couple of comparisons. You can go back to Michael Page. He only got a 30-day suspension from Hunt the Front after his actions against Corey Hedgecock at Sonoya a couple of weeks ago. Very similar to Bob Gardner here. Obviously, it was after the feature. He got into the rear of Hedgecock, drove him around through turns 1 and 2. Hedgecock's rear wheels were off the ground, and then kind of drove him into the inside wall, nearly flipped him, probably would have flipped if the wall wasn't there. And then he only got a 30-day suspension. So I'd love an explanation as to why there's such a discrepancy here between Michael Page and Bob Gardner's suspension. Obviously, you have two different sanctioning bodies here with Mars and Hunt the Front, but obviously you still have DIRTcar, World of Outlaws, and World Racing Group involved. So one would assume that you would have at least some kind of parity in the penalty here. And 30 days and 6 months is a massive discrepancy there. So I'd love to know why one got 6 months and one only got 30 days. I would have thought that he probably should have got similar to what Michael Page got with that 30-day suspension there. And then obviously you had the other end, which is what Port Royal did with Taylor Farling, where they not only suspended him for the rest of 2025, but they suspended him for the entire 2026 season as well. I've done multiple videos on that saying how I think that is just way over the top. And then even adding the other tracks that kind of got in on that as well, when he didn't even do that at their tracks. I thought that was just utterly ridiculous. And I still think that's just crazy. A year and a half suspension, just way too harsh there. But obviously, Mars and World Racing Group, DIRTcar, etc., thought that 6 months is what Bob Gardner, or at least 6 months is what Bob Gardner needed. But I still think that it doesn't really make a lot of sense given Michael Page's 30-day suspension. I thought those two incidences were extraordinarily similar. I know I suggested in a previous video that maybe a 5-race suspension would be valid. I know if you look at some other series outside of the dirt, you look at NASCAR, they suspended Bubba Wallace for just 1 race after he retaliated in race against Kyle Larson, which obviously is similar to Bob Gardner here. Obviously, I know that there are significant issues when you turn someone upside down, etc. Lots of things can go wrong. Obviously, we saw Brian Shirley's car explode into fire during his race at Needmore earlier this year. So there's obviously lots of problems that could happen if you flip someone over like that, and you don't want that to happen. But is 6 months and is an indefinite suspension with a minimum of 6 months going to stop this type of action? They're obviously trying to send a message. We shall see. And again, it's not like Bob Gardner has a track record of kind of retaliating like this. I haven't really seen it like pretty regularly or anything like that. It seems like he clearly saw red and went after it. And we see that happen not all too regularly, but it does happen. And again, I think you have to beg the question of, well, what's the difference if he decided to retaliate during a race 2 races later, right? Like, what's the difference, right? I do think that that is a question now, right? If he wanted to retaliate later, is that worse than doing it right away? Which one is worse, and which one gets the penalty? It seems that if you're doing something under caution, that seems to be a much more severe penalty from a lot of these sanctioning bodies. But I do think those are questions that I hope they took into account. And I just really love like an explanation as to why the Michael Page penalty is so much less, or why Bob Gardner's is so much more harsh than Michael Page. Is it because Gardner actually was able to flip him and Hedgecock's car got stopped by the inside wall? Because if that's the case, that just seems like a ridiculous reasoning to me. I feel like that Gardner should have gotten the same penalty as Michael Page if they're going to be consistent. But let me know what you guys make of this penalty. What kind of penalty would you have given Bob Gardner over this? Do you agree with the penalty that Mars gave him with the indefinite suspension that will last at least 6 months? Let me know in the comments below.